Okay, sir. So finally, we are live on Facebook as well as YouTube. So good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank all the participants who have decided to join in this particular live webinar. We have received overwhelming response from all over the country. We are really thankful for you that. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. I am Ajinkya Kulkarni. I am co-founder of Talent Battle Private Limited. We are a one-stop platform for placement preparation where we provide services to students as well as colleges. This particular webinar is organized in association with Federation of Training and Placement Officers India, JSPM Group and Talent Battle. We are really fortunate to have Ullas Acharya sir for this particular webinar on careers opportunities in Japan. So in case while having a webinar, if you are having a doubt, you can post your doubts on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. I'll be taking some of the questions and asking question to sir. Well, let me just share the screen. Okay. So let me just quickly introduce to all our viewers about Sir. Ullas Acharya Sir is currently working as a director at Sun and Sands Advisors, Japan. He is CEO and director of Sun and Sands Info Private Limited and also founded Asian Bridge Consulting Private Limited in India. He has almost 27 years of experience in various IT industries, specialized in IT software, telecom billing, e-commerce, and commissioning of manufacturing plants. He has held executive roles in Fujitsu, IBM Japan, HP Japan, Vodafone Japan, Cisco Japan, and Rakuten Japan in various departments. So we are really fortunate that we are having Sir for this particular discussion. Students and even some of the college officials were really interested to join this particular session. So now I will hand over to Sir, who will be giving us the presentation, and later we will be having question and answer with Sir. So now I will just share the screen with Sir. Sir, you can share your slide screen now. Yes, sir. Sure. Oh, okay. Yes, sir. Great. Sure, sir. Yes. Not here. Oh, yes. I can see now, sir. Yes, great. Yeah. Sir, just let me check with the audio. Just a sec. Just a sec, sir. Ha, sir. Now you can continue.
I'll finally go to the opportunities in Japan, both in terms of education as well as work. Basically, Japan, we have been
Sir,
interacting with.
just a sec. I'm getting some messages. Just a sec. About audio issue. Let me just confirm it.
Okay, so I think if you are audible, then I am audible, right?
Yeah, they're able to hear me. Just let me check. Sir, can you just remove the headphones so we can try it?
Without headphone? Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, now they are able to hear. Yes, great.
Okay. Um, that's fine. I'll just go back to the presentation then. Is this okay now?
Yes, sir, definitely.
Okay, so sorry about the glitch. I will be, as I said, talking a little bit about Japan and Japanese culture, little bit about Japanese language, market differences, and then finally we'll come to the point on opportunities in Japan. I believe we spent 5 minutes in this, so I'll try to squeeze a little bit here and then move on. I think we all of us know that Maruti Suzuki is the company which started the Japan business with India. However, that is not the case. I think if we look at the history, generally we get all this GDP about Japan, the population about Japan, everything in Google. So I'm just not talking about that common data which is easily readable and available in Japan.
Right.
But if you go back to Japan and India relations, then the Bodhisena, which was a disciple of Buddha, he had gone to Japan and then established the Buddhism in Japan in 736. And officially, that is the time frame when Japan accepted the Buddhism. Now, since then, I think if you look at it in terms of the culture, there is a lot common between Japan and India. Close to 90% of our Hindu gods and goddesses are basically taken as it is by Japanese. Then the vegetarian food, everything was vegetarian till the Meiji era. Japan is basically very much believe in karma and the actions we take, the, the results coming out of it, and so on. So basically, the concept of Hinduism, Buddhism is deeply rooted in Japan. So historically, we are very much connected to each other. Then after close to like 50, 60 years after the Buddhism introduced into Japan, then they introduced the Japanese script, which we use right now. It's called hiragana. That was introduced and completely based on the Sanskrit. They call it as a bongo, but that was done in 794 AD, and it's very very similar to our Sanskrit, Marathi, Hindi. Those who learn Japanese language probably are aware that it's very close to our Hindi and Marathi. Then we know that Zain Tata, who was basically father of industry in India, then his colleague back in Japan is called Shibusawa Eiichi. They founded the first joint venture, which is not known to most of the people, but the first company started with Japan and India is Nihon Yusen, which was way back in 1893. So we are close to now 127 years with this company, but we know only Suzuki. Shibusawa is also called the father of industry in Japan. He was only 1 year difference in the age of Mr. Tata as well as Shibusawa. And the story behind it is very, very interesting is that Tataji found out that the cotton and the silk which is being produced in India is marketed in Japan through UK. And he was kind of angry with that UK is taking a lot of margins in the business. So he one day he decided to go to Japan. He landed there and he had a conversation with Mr. Shibusawa that can we set up one joint venture which will work in favor of both. And after that, they set up this company in 1893, and that's how the Japan India started the first business way back, like 127 years. After that, there were a lot of ups and downs between Japan and India, but we celebrated our 60th friendship year in 2012. Just down the line, 2 years, we'll have 70 years completed with this. And both, fortunately, PMs are now connected to each other, very good relations between India and Japan. And that's how I think we see the opportunities coming up in terms of Japan and India, because these two gentlemen are really working for the common goal, having a good friendship as well as the prosperity in these two countries. If you look at it in terms of Japan, I think we always acknowledge Japan as a technology-oriented company, but go back to just the era of 1940, where Japan was not technology leader then. And if you look at these company names which I have shared with you now, Philips, then Austin Halle and British MG and so on, these are the companies, those were the masters, right? Including the Philips. Right now, we do see Philips as the only European company which has retained their still brand. Otherwise, everything is been wiped out by Canon, Nikon, and Honda, Android, and so on. Nobody knows that there were cameras manufactured in Europe which were far better than the Japanese over there.
Sir,
Again,
just to interrupt, like, sorry to interrupt for 1 second. Can you please again use headphone because we are getting comments about it?
okay. Is this okay now?
Yes.
Okay. So there is one big deep sea drilling ship which is called Chikyu. Chikyu means earth in Japanese. They are capable of drilling down to the close to the 12,000 meters in the sea. And this is the latest figure. What I have mentioned there is the 7,740 meters, which is a little bit old figure. And Mount Everest is 7,800 meters, right? So they are drilling the whole Mount Everest in the sea in order to do the expeditions and then understand what is happening at the bottom of the sea. So this is the technology. Look at the pressure that is available at that particular deep sea. Uh, Understand the oxygen is not there, the light is not there, and that's how they develop the technology on their own. This is completely their own manufactured vessel. Again, when it comes to the miniaturization of the things, the smallest robo, Tommy is a company which is manufacturing the small sports equipment as well as some sports material. They have created this, toys rather, created this robo, which is very, very small. If you look at this picture over here, this is the smallest robo available at this moment in the world, which is called isobo. Then again, we do appreciate Japanese people when it comes to the consistency, the quality. The reason behind it is this: is that the Bank of Korea, they did one research in 2008, and they found that there are 5,586 companies in the world which has a legacy of more than 200 years, and out of that, close to 56%, which is 3,146 companies, are basically located in Japan. So if you're running a company on your own and running it for the period of 200 years, you understand the quality of the product, the market, and this is not we are talking about over the internet. Okay, this is not like online shopping. So you have to understand the market pricing, the dynamics, the raw material, and still continue the same product over the period of 200 years. If imagine if you are looking at a food product, imagine looking at you are looking at as shoes, and then using that product over the period of 200 years is you have to have a very good relations with your company people, your own employees, where you train them, where you expose them to the market, understand them, the pricing, the keeping the quality of the material throughout the lifespan of the companies. And similarly, there are 21,000 companies in Japan which has more than 100 years of legacy. And this is happening simply because Japanese companies, they put a lot of efforts in terms of training their people, educating them, rewarding them. And that's the reason I think we see this legacy of consistent quality. Productivity, if you look at it in terms of Japan is 1/9. I mean, I didn't go into all these demographics and other things, but Japan is 1/9 in terms of the size of the continent, Indian the same size, and 1/10 in terms of the population of India. But only 16% of that land is available for the utilization, which includes the housing, industry, and so on. Okay, so they are like not only 1/9 of India, But out of that also, they are using only 16% of the land. So, which is very interesting, because if you look at the GDP of Japan, which is like third or fourth right now at this moment, and with this much of only land, if that GDP is achieved, look at their productivity, look at their industrialization, look at their understanding how to get the best and optimum out of the industry as well as the land which is available. Okay? Now, switching a little bit here on the culture side, we understand and we've seen these pictures in Japan, from Japan, all over the news and other places, where Japanese are cleaning the football field, they are cleaning up the mess who has left by the other people and so on. So why this is happening? I mean, if we look at it ourselves, we don't even bother of picking up the garbage from our next door. Forget about picking up the garbage from the common place, which is used by thousands or millions, right? And there are a lot of stories like this, that wherever there is a football stadium, wherever there are Japanese sitting, that area has been found clean. Okay, so this is, I think, the part, the social behavior that these people are showing, which we call it as a culture, and that's the reason I think Japanese get a lot of respect for this kind of their behavior, their honesty. You must have heard a lot of cases or stories that they found their wallet safe and sound in Japan without any problem. They have found their PCs in the trains and the buses and so on. Nobody gets lost or mugged in Japan. So this is, I think, the part of a culture which is kind of a social phenomena. And since we being the human being, I think we are associated with this society, which in turn basically associated with the culture. Where it is cultivated, because see, all of a sudden, if you start saying that, okay, at the age of 40 I'll be more social person, at the age of 40 I'll be the modest person in the world, that's not going to happen, because culture as well as the activities and the goals are a result of our day-to-day activities as well as our day-to-day achievements. So this is what I see. In Japan, there are no janitors in the school. The school is cleaned by the students. Okay, whether it's a toilet or it's a corridor or it's their sitting chair, it doesn't matter. Everything is cleaned by them, and that's the reason where they have absolutely no understanding as well as a discrimination when it comes to doing a job. Okay, whether it's a cleaning of a toilet or you being a chairman of a Mitsubishi company, both are equally treated. The chairman of the company, when he enters into the company, he will definitely say good morning to the person who is next to him. He will never ever show that he is the boss. He will get out of the car, ignore the person next to him, and then get into the office. This will not happen. The greetings are very much appreciated in Japan, and with this kind of behavior taught from the beginning, I think you become a socially responsible person. You become a responsible person, and you become a good human being. What I have concluded out of all this is, so far from my earlier understanding, is why does it work in terms of Japan? Why does it work in other countries? Is because these guys, they take a pride in doing their job. We generally chalta hai is our general attitude. I'm not saying it's applicable for everyone, but we just take the things and then move on. So we don't have our name associated with that particular job. Hey, this is done by me. Okay, if you have any problem with this, come to me and then I'll resolve it. It's not there. The pride is not there with the job. Okay, the sense of responsibility. Again, I didn't do it. Someone did it, right? Okay, it's because of him the things failed. It's not about that. It's about the teamwork. It's about your responsibility. It's about how you support the other person, and that's how basically you build up your own professionalism, and then treat the others respectfully and giving your best. That's why these people, basically Japanese guys, they come on top, even if they are not the best brains in the world. If you look at all these earlier companies like Toyota, or for that matter Canon, Nikon, they didn't invent the camera. They didn't invent the car. They didn't invent the bullet train as well. The bullet train came first from America to them. The fast train. It was under the name of the fast train. They invented. They put up a lot of minute details. Their execution was better. Their planning was better, and they reached to the top where now even America cannot copy them. Even the first manufacturer of the camera company cannot copy the Canon and Nikon right now. And this is happening with their passion. The person who is doing their job, he does it because it's not only he's doing it his job because he loves his position. He's completely given his efforts to achieve that particular target as well as to get to the goal. And that comes with the integrity. As I said, these guys are very honest. If they fail, they'll come and say, sorry, I failed. Nobody will basically get angry in Japanese company when you are working in Japanese company because you failed. They will get angry because you didn't follow the proper practice. It's probably maybe you didn't follow the rules which were laid down there. They may say that you have skipped a couple of things in the process because they are process oriented people. They generally don't look at the result only. They will look at the what we call as khate, the process in between, so that you can better the process. You cannot just jump to the result. Okay, there is a betterment of the process that comes in between before you reaching the result. And with the betterment of the process, I think achieving the better and better results is possible. That's where I think this passion and teamwork and professional things comes in, and that's how these guys cultivate this from the beginning. As I said, I think society is the culture, culture is the society, and it's a reflection of each other. That's the reason people in Japan, they respect the other person. Their mannerism is basically seen as the best in the world. The responsibility in the society, they will not say he has done something on the street. If he does see something wrong, he will try, and honestly he will try to improve it. Okay, so these are some qualities that we see in Japanese people. Because of this, I believe they have better culture. Like now look at it in terms of India. We had a Gurukul. That time our whole society was good. Nobody was greedy. Nobody was basically looking for money only. Nobody was, I mean, it's not good or bad whether you're looking for money or not. But again, when it comes to the being a different human being, giving back to the society and other things, these are the qualities probably you would like to have it in the human being when you would like to treat as well as when you would like to interact with them. So these are a couple of things which I see as a part of a best things from Japanese culture. Definitely, we have rich history as well as rich culture as well. I think it's a honing or going back to the origin is required for us also. About the business culture, as I said, that Japan is being the right now manufacturing company. Okay, versus Indians, we are very much in terms of the service oriented. We are very good at talking. We are very good in terms of the sales and marketing. You ask anyone to do the sales and marketing, he'll do it in a flash of second, because I think these are again the roots from our Silk Route, from our selling the gems and spices to all over the world, and then bringing their things into India and then selling it in India. So these are, I think, the kind of differences between Japanese and Indians. I'm saying it as a global, but again, whether it's global or India, probably it would remain the same, because Japanese are not good in terms of selling the things. Okay, they are good in terms of creating the things or refining the things. When it comes to the Japanese company, the employee will definitely say it's a company first. Okay, it's not me first. If you get some hike in the competitor's company, he will definitely not go there. Okay, because he has spent a lot of money, he has spent a lot of efforts, he has built relations in his company where he's looking at. So his company first will basically take the priority over the initial, or rather the owns priorities. Okay, Then others first, as I say, as we have seen it into the earlier screens, that cleaning up the football team is not anyone's job. But if you keep the dirt over there, the person who is coming after you is going to get suffered. That is the reason he is cleaning up. The same thing happens even if you go to the Japanese trains, Japanese buses, and so on. So thinking of others comes first, and that basically is with the integrity that no, I don't want someone to get suffered because of my nonsense or my nuisance over here. That is the mindset in case of Japan. Nowadays it's changing in IT, but the long-term employment is no more there. People do change in IT, but that's not the case in terms of manufacturing, because the manufacturing is a completely different ball game. You have to be at the shop floor. You have to understand the machines. You have to understand the material. You have to understand how each individual machine does operate and work, and that is nothing but a know-how as well as the experience. Okay, that comes by spending that time with the machine or with your superiors or with the material. That is the reason the Japanese companies still do not look for the foreigners when it comes to the manufacturing sector. However, in terms of the global as well as even in India, we look at, oh, I need a Java's developer, I need a PHP's developer, I need IT's backend person. So, which is a position-based recruitment, which is not what we call it as a completely a long time employment, where you are just bringing an engineer and training him for PHP, training him for Java, training him for different IT skills. That does happen to some extent, but doesn't happen over the period of the lifespan of an individual. Okay, Japan as well as the other countries, when it comes to decision, Japanese companies generally take the slow decision because their decision making process is different, which probably I'll discuss it in the next couple of slides. On the other hand, we have a CEO who is taking the decision, okay, from tomorrow onwards, we are starting our mask development. So the decision has been made. Now nobody knows what kind of mask it is going to be, whether it's going to be a gas mask or it's just a filter mask or it's just a paper mask or it's a other mask. So those things basically don't happen in Japan. They make the consensus within their team. They make their plan within the team, and that goes up into the ladder for the approval. So these are the company based things which probably will help you to understand when you go and work as an employee in Japan. These are the things probably they will look at it to you, that how you react and how you work in the company. Okay, you are working as a team member, or you are an individual person who is smart to lead the descriptions.
Okay.
About the Japanese language, sorry, the font has a little bit crumbled here. But as I said, Japanese language is completely based on Sanskrit, and it's same as Marathi and Hindi. We have what we call it as a Barakdi. Japan has only 5 vowels, so they have only 5 uh, basically pronunciations in the language, not unlike our 12. Okay, grammar, sentence style, patterns, everything is same as Hindi and Marathi. So whatever we can say it in Hindi, like "मैं खाना खा रहा हूँ," the same way we can say it in Japanese. You'll be surprised to hear that "खाके देखो." When you try and translate it into any other language, it's not a right fit in the other language. But in case of Japanese, you can very well say "khake dekho." These are the 2 verbs. Okay, khana is a one verb and dekhna is another verb. Are not at all related to each other, but does convey the meaning to us. "Khake dekho" means you try it. Okay, but when you say it in English, you have to say it as a try. Okay, you cannot say "khake dekho." You cannot translate as it is into verbs. But the same thing we can do it in Japanese. Okay? We can use these 2 same verbs, khana and dekhna, and then say the same thing. So it's that same. The similarities are at that level. People say that Japanese is very difficult, and it's a barrier. The kanjis are not clear to us, and so on. But no, any language is a bridge. Once you understand the language, it's an asset for you throughout your life. Okay, so language is not basically a barrier; it's always a bridge. If you, I mean, it's basically a social phenomenon again. If you are living in Japan, definitely you'll learn more. If you are living in Maharashtra, you'll speak Marathi. If you are living in Gujarat, you will speak Gujarati. If you are living in Punjab, you will start speaking Punjabi. It's just a matter of time how fast you are to pick it up. So don't basically make it as a barrier, and rather it's a mind block that you have to give up, as well as you have to overcome. When it comes to the Japanese culture, as well as the kanjis and other things, people say that no, this is the reason we don't work with Japan. This is the reason we don't like Japanese and other things. But that's not the case. If you look at it in terms of the Japanese and Chinese business with us, I think we do more business with China than with Japan, and the language barrier is still there, right? I mean, we don't know how to write in Chinese, so that's not basically the barrier. It's just a mind block. So I think if you start learning it, you'll overcome it. Again, there is no barometer in any language. I cannot say that I'm the perfect Marathi native person, because if you come up with some words which I haven't heard in my past, I'm not able to go and explain it to you. And the same is with English, same is with any other language. Okay, there is no barometer. Like if there are 1 million words in any language, I may be able to only understand 200, 300,000, not more than that. Okay, so don't say that I don't know about so many things about so and so language, so I'm not a professional, or so keep it moving. Okay. Now about Japanese language as a barometer when it comes to for the recruitment, like what we have TOEFL and TOEIC, there is a test called Japanese language proficiency test, which is conducted by Japan Foundation, part of a Japan government, you can say, which is from N5 to N1 level. N5 is the basic level. N1 is the topmost level. Now, every level you have to basically improve yourself. Just to give you the perspective of it, that N5 level will be something like you are in a junior KG or KG, and N1 is the level where probably you are just going to join the college, university. Okay, so once you start going from N5, N4, N3, N2, N1, by the time you leave the N2, I think you are professional enough in that language to speak with anyone. Okay.
Okay,
Now
sir,
about
there are just one or two questions based on Japanese language. So let me just take it right now only. So later on it will help. So one question is related to how many like Japanese levels we should complete before moving to Japan.
so you want me to answer this question first? Okay.
So students are asking immediately related to this.
Okay, so basically, they again, it depends on in which area you are. When it comes to IT, there are a few companies who are not looking for any Japanese language, but they are looking for the specialist in that particular field. Okay, for them, they will bring it on the board and then train them either in Japan as well as in India. Okay, so for those companies where you are treated as a specialist, nobody cares about your language. Okay, because you are, for example, you are a master of blockchain. Okay, then probably nobody is going to ask you anything about your language, whether it's English or whether it's European or whether it's Japanese. Okay, because you're a specialist over there. Now, when it comes to the general level of recruitment in terms of IT and non-IT as well, generally speaking, Japanese companies look at the person with a level of N3 or close to N3.
Okay.
Where he or she is able to communicate as well as express himself because N3 is not the level where you are an expert of any language.
Okay.
But you move on. Once you go into Japan, once you are in that environment, I think from moving from N3 to N1 will not be that much of difficult time. Probably within span of 1.5 year, you'll reach that level.
Okay.
What is the next question?
Just one more question related to it. May I know the opportunity as a fresher in Japan currently learning JLPT N5?
Okay, that I'll come to in my job opportunities discussion.
Sure, sir.
Okay?
So we can continue, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, there is this disruption because of this. I think probably PowerPoint missing on this PC. What I was trying to share is a little bit market dynamics. When it comes to the risk and returns, these red things which are red circles, which are basically representing Japan, and the blue one is represented by India. A little bit distorted here, so sorry about that. But basically, Japan, when it comes to the organized sectors, matured market, infrastructure, and other issues, they are low in terms of risk as well as low in terms of returns. Okay, this is how you should see it as a square. Okay, when it comes to the labor, there are absolutely no issues in terms of the risk, but the availability of labor is very low. That is the challenge in terms of Japan, because in order to maintain their 1% of GDP, they need at least 3 to 5 lakh engineers every year. So that is where I think the opportunity for Indians are. I'll just skip this because I think there is a lot of things missing here. Okay, I'll go into the opportunities in terms of Japan. As I said that Japan is very much welcoming all the people from across the board when it comes to the skilled labor. There are close to 3,000 scholarships if you are looking for the education in Japan, and these are basically private, government, as well as non-government scholarships also. Every year we have close to 3 lakhs Indian students going abroad for Japan. However, the challenge is that people don't see Japan as their educational opportunities. So far, I think, even last year, I believe the count was 1,048, where Indians went to Japan, and maybe 60-70% out of that probably will were on the scholarship. So when it comes to Japan for the overseas education, we don't see that as an opportunity. Okay, we have a lot of people going all across Europe, US, Australia, even New Zealand, and people. This is the reason I intentionally kept this here. People say to me that food is a problem for me in Japan, language is a problem for me in Japan. But look at the number of students going to China. Close to 7,000 to 9,000 Indian students are going to China every year. And then where is the problem with this? There is a problem with the food. There is a problem with the language. There is a problem with the culture. Problem in a sense, basically, there is a barrier. There is the same gap what we see it in terms of Japan as well. Okay, because the food habits of Chinese person are not same as the Indian person, and whatever we call it as a Chinese in India is absolutely not at all available in China. Okay, trust me on this because I've been to China a couple of times as well. So this mindset of basically Japan, where their education will be different, my food habits will be different, it's not the case. Okay. On the other hand, Japan is inviting Indians with the scholarship and basically giving the opportunities after that for the recruitment also, or for that matter, the higher studies also. Okay. When it comes to China and Japan, their business in terms of $1 trillion is simply because there's a lot of human interaction happening between these countries. As I mentioned here, that 82,000 Chinese students have been going to Japan every year. I'm talking about students, not employees. Okay, and imagine out of this, only 5% or only even 1% start doing their own business in their country. Okay, so you are changing the dynamics of the market here. If 82 students who have studied in Japan returning back to China and doing their entrepreneurship, they are building the business between Japan and China. They are the one who are contributing to their own GDPs. And these are basically the factors That's the reason where the China and Japan business has grown. Okay. Now the visa and other things has been relaxed to the easiest possible way. So I don't see that as an issue. Earlier it was, but nowadays it's not at all an issue. Now, when it comes to the recruitment and other things, basically there is a huge demand required in terms of white as well as blue collar labor. But so far, I think the Japan has been procuring their blue collar from China, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and close by vicinities where they had their historical relations. And good or bad, India has been never. India has not been seen as a blue collar business in terms of labor, because we are treated very respectfully, whether you are going to US or whether you are going to Japan or for that matter US, Europe, because most of our brain drain, we can say, has happened because of the IT or because of the R&Ds and other things. So people give a lot of respect to the Indians, and they don't see that as a blue collar person. But I think if you look at it in terms of manufacturing, then in order to have the skilled I'm using a rough word, but skilled labor is a requirement for the Indian manufacturing. Okay, without this, I think we are suffering, and we have suffered a lot. If we have, and this is probably, as I said, that the blue collar and white collar, these words have come up, and we use it frequently in India because we don't respect the other person for his job. Okay, if the car mechanic is repairing your car on highway, you'll respect him. But if he is on the street, you'll not respect him. And that is, I think, the mindset that we have to change. So the labor, or for that matter, the manpower, if we skill them for the manufacturing in Japan, I think there will be a huge opportunity between Japan and India. The quality consensus as well as the qualities understanding, building up the manufacturing hubs will be a different discussion altogether. Okay. Then every year, I think Japan is looking for a lot of IT people, and our Modi ji and Abe ji has signed a special treaty where Indians can go to Japan and work there. So close to, I think, 3 lakh people are required there in terms of healthcare, IT, security, including the teachers as well. Now there are, I think, four schools available Indian schools available in Japan. When I was there were very few, but now I think the count is also increasing. So going again to the labor demand, I think every field, look at whether it's a manufacturing or export or computers or education or hotel hospitality business, everywhere the people are required. Wherever there the people are required, I think the skilled labor, skilled people, skilled migrants are required. Okay. When it comes to the visa, I think, as I said, 94% of the people, those who have worked in Japan, as those who have studied in Japan, they get their visa without any problem for working. 5-6% probably because either they are going for the higher education or not applied, they don't get the visa. That is the 5-6%. Though these figures are old, but trust me on this. Every year, I work with most of the IITs, and we send close to 80 to 90 people every year to Japan, and so far none has been rejected. Okay, last year we had 107-8 people going from India to Japan, but no one has been rejected for their working permit. I think this was the question, like in which sector, in which field I'll get probably job, or what do I need to do. So if you look at it in terms of the profile, whether it's a trading business, it's a financial business, it's a manufacturing business, it's IT or overseas firms, what we call it as, everywhere there are opportunities. Okay, it's not just only IT engineers. There is a manufacturing hub in Japan where the manufacturing mechanical engineers are required. Electrical electronics industry is there. Then in order to trade those products, there are trade houses. Okay, so that's where I think these things are required. And I think there is a misconception in Indians that only engineers are required all across the board. But that's not the case. If you understand the Japanese language, and for example, if you understand law, if you understand the law from India, and if you understand the basics of law in Japan, you will be the bridge in terms of the international law. The same thing happens in terms of accounting. Same thing happens in terms of taxation. So it's not just only about one thing that only engineers are required. So just get this mindset or block out of your mind that only engineers are required all across the globe, but that's not the case. Okay, every company there is a taxation requirement, there is a legal requirement. Okay, so if you study your commerce and accounting and then CPAs and other things, all these things, get your certifications, and then probably I think it's just a language that you're adding on top of it. Okay, so the chemical industry or IT industry or a manufacturing industry, everywhere there are opportunities available, and these are just a few global big names. When it comes to the middle size, what we call as SMEs, there is a lot of opportunities there as well. But for them, as I said, the bare minimum requirement of the language is there simply because, unlike IT companies where English is very common across the globe, but not for in terms of manufacturing, where the manufacturing is happening at the lower level of the shop floor, where you have to be in jail with your teamwork. Okay, so the language is required.
Sir,
Okay.
let me just cover one or two questions related to it, which students have asked. So, students have asked it separately, like what are the opportunities for civil, mechanical, then electronics, CSE, electrical. Even some of the questions are related to what are the opportunities for like students who have completed MBA.
Okay. Now, I did not want to go into this territory, but again, mechanical, as I said, if you know language and if you join any even local company, which is a collaboration. For example, Toyota is there, Suzuki is there, Honda is there, Bridgestone is there. There are a lot of companies available over here. Even if you go and join them, you will definitely get an opportunity to go to Japan. Okay, whether it's IT or electrical or any domain, you look at it, and this is possible. Now, if you want to go to Japan from the beginning itself, then I think you have to apply over there. Okay. Now, when you have applying all across the border over directly to Japan, you have to have something niche skill with you. Okay, because otherwise, your resume has to have that. It has to carry that weight. Okay, that yes, I have a specialization in so and so, and that's the reason I'm applying to your company. Language is not the only case, because language is going to support you to gel with your team, to gel with your management, to gel with your society. But when you are applying to a particular company, you have to have the specific skill set, which I was just about to talk in next couple of slides. That's fine, no problem. The MBA things, basically, I haven't introduced single MBA in Japan simply because MBA people, maybe I think it's my misperception as well, but the thing is they are very ambitious. They want to become a CFO or CXO next year, and that is not possible in Japan. Okay, because you may be ambitious, but you need to have the nitty-gritty details with you. You should be able to plan the projects. You should be able to execute the project. It's not just sitting in a AC room and then drawing the picture. That doesn't work well in Japan. And as I said, I think that is the reason the plants developed in Japan are different than the plants developed in India.
Okay.
So these are the company expectation things. Basically, when you are applying, as I said, whether you had an internship experience in that field, what are your extracurricular activities? Nobody's going to see you as only a person who is very good at maths or very good at education only, because when you are applying globally, people look at you as a human being, not only as a business, not only as a student. Okay, what you have done so far as extracurricular activities, what you have done in terms of giving back to the societies, or what you have done in terms of supporting your friends in a particular project. Okay, what was your role in that particular project? These are the basic common questions generally are asked even in the interview. Okay, if you say that four of us we did XYZ project in IT, then or even in mechanical engineering last year project, definitely the HR person will ask you what was your role, how many. He will not ask you how did you succeed. He will ask you what are the challenges you have faced, because Japanese people, their mindset is different. They will understand how you have overcome the challenge. Okay, so these are the things. Basically, generally the left side is how you apply. Okay, application happens, then the CV screening happens, then the Skype happens, then face-to-face interviews happen, and the final interview may happen even in Japan as well as in India. Okay, but these are the 4 or 5 stages where you have to go through. Now look at the second stage itself, applying and CV screening. Here, where you have to make sure that your documented thing is clear enough to understand by the HR person. Okay, because we write like 3 pages, 4 pages, but nobody knows what the project has done, what you have achieved from the project, what was your role in the project. Nothing is visible there. Okay, like we did XYZ. So make sure that these things are properly articulated. Apart from that, when it comes to the interview, you need to be very specific, like why do you want to work in that particular company, why do you want to go to Japan, why not in US? Because see, 80% of Indians are going to US and Europe and other places, then you are the one who are odd and choosing the Japan. Then you have to have that particular strong statement which says, okay, this is the reason I'm going for Japan. And then please don't bring I mean, definitely people do say that I love animation or I love manga and so on, that's the reason. Yes, that could be one reason, but then definitely it has to be related to your interview. Okay, then what experience you did in your school life, as I said, like what did you achieve? Okay, what how did you succeed so far? Okay, what has been your uh, growth track so far? What was your tough time in your life? How did you overcome that? So these are the things that they generally ask, and then they will see how special you are. Okay, so these are the screening things. Then again, I think we hear the okay, here again during the interview they will definitely check you what's your skill set. Okay, how is your mindset? Because Japanese people will look at only your mindset, whether you are interested in developing it together. Okay, whether you are a person with a teamwork or not. Okay, then whether you are self motivated or not. Here I think if we keep asking the same question, asking the same requirement to a person, we may get a result on after the 10th request. But that doesn't go in Japan. Okay, if someone has told you to do something, it's your responsibility to go back and tell him that this is what has happened, this is where I am, and where I need a help, and so on. Because we have a tendency like, okay, today is I have to submit something, then today I will come up with the questions. Okay, today is my deadline, today is I have to submit something, but today I come up with the questions asking for clarification. So that's, I think, not the professionalism that is Japan is looking at. Okay, and generally that is seen through your behavior when you are taking the interviews and so on, whether you're self-motivated or not. That is seen through even in your documents. Okay, then again, once you come up with this skill set and mindset and you are motivated and recruited in the company, then and then you start going to gain the experience as well as improve your educational things. Okay, and that builds your mindset, which we call it as a soul. In terms of your career planning, I think professionalism is the best one, where you have to show professionalism in every aspects of your career, whether it's a time management, your punctuality, preparation. I call it as a 6P and 1T. When you are going for an interview, make sure that you are at least acquainted with these things, where a Japanese person will see it. Because even when it comes to the IITians interviews, we ask them to be at the place at least 15 minutes ahead of time. Because if you are late, generally Japanese are not rude, so they will not say no to you on your face, but they will not accept you as a person to absorb in the company. So these are the basic things probably you have to look at it. You have to make sure that you don't come up with the boasting and arrogance in saying that this is what I done, because of this, because of me the project has happened. So these things are generally okay in case of US and UK, but not in case of Japan. Okay, and that's where I'm coming up with the Q&A now. I think I
Okay,
took
sir.
a little bit more time, but I believe I addressed most of
Right.
the potential questions in the
Yes, sir.
presentation itself. Okay,
Just
I'll be ready to take the questions if you have any.
yes, sir. I will do that. Okay, so do you want to stop screen share?
That's your call. Yes, I'll stop it.
Yes.
Okay, and you are going to bring back your host access.
No, not required.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll take now. I have received many questions, sir. Actually, so I'll be taking some of the questions, and later on we'll be giving a feedback form to users like participants as well. So if they're having some important questions, so we can check it.
We'll
So
address them definitely.
yes, yes. So I will go one by one. So one of the question is related to in the presentation you have mentioned that there is a shortfall of workers in construction industry. So how can civil engineers take this particular opportunity?
Okay, so let me just share with you that civil engineers are highly required in Japan because uh, there is always a construction happening, either it's a dam or a tunnel or something like this in Japan.
Okay.
The difference between the civil engineer in India and the civil engineer in Japan is that we see a civil engineer as only as a contractor, but
Okay.
that's not the case of Japan. Civil engineering in Japan does require a lot of R&D as well. Okay, because if you go to the big uh,
Hmm.
skyscrapers basically they are all built based on the rubbers. Okay, and as we all of are aware that Japan is basically a very earthquake prone country.
Right.
Your structure, your architecture has to meet those requirements. So the Indian civil engineering is not going to get as it is translated in Japan.
Okay.
Okay, so you have to have that knowledge, which probably you have to go through either the company's training or through the specific education that Japanese give. I know that there are a couple of IITs who are working on the earthquake prone architect designs and architecture. But I think Japan is way ahead in terms of doing that because
Hmm.
even in case of last big earthquake tsunami in 311, I believe, not even a single glass was broken on the street, not even
Okay.
single, because I was there in Japan. I was on 27th floor. My whole building was shaking. And I was damn afraid on that day because
Hmm.
earlier I never bothered about any earthquake, but that earthquake was very, very much terrorizing.
Okay.
But not even a single building was collapsed in Tokyo. Not even a single building, not even a single structure was damaged to the extent where we can say there is a damage. Okay,
Okay.
so the architecture
Yes.
and the civil engineering is a little bit different.
Hmm.
So I suggest you to look at the aspects where you can learn those things
Hmm.
before you applying it to the company.
Okay. So, sir, next question is related to is NAT considered by Japanese companies?
NAT is generally not considered as compared to the JLPT
Hmm.
because NAT is coming up, and the level of NAT and JLPT, I think there is a compatibility issue as
Hmm.
of now. So the Japanese companies generally they prefer the JLPT, which is so far it's been treated as a standard all across the globe.
Okay.
I'm not saying NAT is bad. I'm saying it's not widely known.
Okay. Okay. Sir, next question is related to what are the opportunities for tourism and hospitality industry and how does
You,
language proficiency plays a crucial part in it?
huge. There are a lot of opportunities. I think Indians have started going to Japan even in group, and I believe the Kesari and other things are they have also started it.
Hmm.
There are individuals who are going in a group of 10 and 15 people. I come across such groups in Tokyo quite often recently.
Hmm.
And if you know the language, I think then the biggest advantage is to gel with the local society in Japan.
Right.
If you are good in terms of guiding the people, then first thing is that you have to experience it. Okay, first experience it, make your own experience, and then suggest people what is good and bad about Japan. So hospitality business, there are huge opportunities. Services business, there are huge opportunities. Language is going to play a big role there because it's a human to human interaction. Okay.
Okay.
So there are a lot of opportunities available there.
Okay. Sir, one more question is like, how much, like, does the marks and percentage matter for to get the job or higher education in Japan?
In case of Japan, I think this will be a little bit lengthy question to answer. But if you are basically going it for undergraduate or masters, there are two different discussions. For masters, most of the companies look at GMAT and GRE along with TOEFL or TOEIC. So though that score does matter, definitely your CGPA will be one of the criteria, but not everything. When you are talking to the masters, I'm considering this only a master scenario. I'm not talking about UG because I don't believe there are any
Right.
students from the 12th and
Yes,
11th
yes,
at
all
this moment.
engineering. Right.
So the masters, basically the way it works in Japan is you have to find out your area of interest.
Okay.
Okay, during your bachelor's degree, you have to come up with at least some kind of writing which is available on the public domain. Say, for example, I'm looking for the masters in IT in Japan, and my area is blockchain. Then I have to write down something on my own in blockchain. I'll make it that as a public document. Then my next step is to find out a person who, rather a professor in a particular university. Say, for example, a Tokyo University. I'll find out a professor in a Tokyo University who has experience in blockchain. Okay. Now I will communicate my resume, my writings, and everything to him directly. And in case of Japan, the authority of accepting and denying the student lies with the professor rather than the university. Okay. So the person who has applied there will be qualified based on his requirements and the things. And the one catch is that every professor has a number of limited seats. Say, for example, I'm a Tokyo professor. I have 6 seats with me, and 3 are already filled. I'm expecting 3 more to come. Now, if you are one of them, then definitely you'll get a seat. But if you are a 7th person in the list, then probably the chances are that you have to wait for some time and then go ahead. Now, during this application, make sure that your professor has certified you, your marks are good, and if you know who is going to help you as a mentor, take the help of the mentor and then apply. Okay. So application is very simple.
Okay. Sir, one more question is like a direct question we can say. Are there any placement agencies or directly resources where students can connect with and maybe for a job or higher studies?
Now, this is again a bit vague question, but I would definitely suggest that you get in touch with your placement officers first. Say, company like me, where I am representing Asian Bridge Consulting, I work closely with the placement officers. We don't go on individual basis. Generally, when the Japanese companies come here for the event and other things, then it becomes a very open forum for everyone. That we did it in the past with Japan ministries, twice in Pune, once in Bangalore, once in Chennai. But again, these things are not that frequent. So talking to the placement is the right thing, I think.
Okay. Just let me take. In corporate world, Japanese people like which language they prefer.
Again, it depends. It depends on scenario to scenario. If you are working in a trading company, and if you are basically interacting with USA, it's going to be English language. If you are discussing within your own group, probably it will be Japanese language. So I think it's a scenario-based conversation.
Okay. So is there any option for students to directly apply for the companies?
Yes, of course. So you can very well apply directly to the companies. See, every company will have its own HR page. Okay, those who have English page, there will be HR page as well. There will be a HR mail address given to you. You can directly apply to them as well.
Okay, okay. And like one more question, student has asked, how do you compare the education cost with other countries?
Japan is cheap compared to US, Europe. I don't have idea about Australia and New Zealand, but I can very well vouch for this when it comes to Japan versus US or versus UK. because my kid is studying in US right now, and I think his expenses are at least 6 times more compared to Japan.
Okay.
Okay. So I think there is a misconception that Japan is very costly. That's not the case. I'll just give you my own example. When I was a student in Japan in 1992, the cost of the milk, 1 liter milk, was 160 or 170 yen. Okay, roughly translate and then make it half at this moment. So it's close to 80 rupees a liter.
Okay.
Okay. Now I'm talking about this as a 1992. Last month, in February and March, I was in Japan. The cost of milk is still 170 yen.
Okay.
Okay, so even after the span of more than 25 years, the cost of milk has not changed, which is your day-to-day food, you can say. Okay, the same happens with the bread and other things. Now imagine the cost of milk in India in 1992. Okay,
Right.
probably it was 8 rupees or 10 rupees, maybe less than that. Okay, now what is the cost of milk here?
Right.
We're close to 60 to 70 rupees.
Right.
So we don't see a small change every day as a cost increase because we are living with it. But we have a very misconception that the cost of Japan is the living cost in Japan is very high. That's absolutely misconception.
Okay.
And there is a saying in I think Marathi language that if you are earning in gold and spending in gold, then it becomes irrelevant, right? If you are earning in Japanese yen and then spending in Japanese yen, probably it will become irrelevant. Just a phobia of price will be there for first week, but once your tummy is hungry, probably you'll start eating.
Right. Sir, one more question is about COVID-19 effect on the opportunity in Japan, whether it is higher education or job opportunities.
Okay, I think this is a really good question. As of now, what is happening in Japan is Japan has also extended their lockdown period. It's not lockdown as such, it's basically self-restraint that they call it as. The lockdown period in Japan has extended for a couple of days. Only 3 big areas are right now impacted. One is called Hokkaido, which is the northern region, then the Tokyo, and the Osaka region, which is in south. Okay. Now, other than that, most of the Japan is in a green zone.
Okay.
Now, as far as the employment impact is concerned, as I said just a few minutes back, that this year I think we managed to send 106 to 108 students to Japan. None of them has been cancelled. Okay? Not even a single job offer has been revoked. So people are recruiting. As far as the next year recruitment is concerned, I think there will be a little bit of impact on number, but it doesn't mean that the recruitment will not happen. Okay, I'm expecting a short number in terms of the recruitment, but definitely a recruitment will happen. As far as the colleges and universities are concerned, the schools are closed at this moment. Most of the universities are working on online. Okay. The students are taking classes online, which is common across at this moment. Even IITs are taking online classes. Indian schools are taking online classes. US schools are taking online classes. The same thing there. As far as the admissions are concerned, I think it will happen in the same way, but because of the fear of COVID, I think the number of applicants in Japan will be less. But I believe that is an opportunity to go it and write the grab opportunities. And if you go into this time frame, I think there will be less competition in terms of getting the scholarship also.
Right. Okay. One more question, like some professors are asking, like what are the opportunities for postdoc level?
Okay, so the postdoc level in terms of Japan, it does happen, as I said, mainly with the professors. Okay, and your university has to have a tie-up with that particular university so that the exchange of the postdoc happens between these two universities. That is the basic role model in terms of Japan. They do it with US, they do it with China, they do it with Europe as well. Unfortunately, the postdoc rules in India and the rules in Japan are not 100% compatible at this moment. However, there is an exchange of human resources possible between these two. So you can go there and then do the research work for a couple of months under a particular professor, a particular doctor, complete it, and then come back. And then do the rest of the research and other thing activities in your own country. Whether I mean, in case of India, complete the postdoc here. There is no double postdoc or other things available in terms of Japan and India.
Okay.
So that is still not yet done.
Okay, so maybe this I will take as a last question because there are many questions. So
Okay.
maybe later on we can share some of the resources directly with the participants.
Sure.
One of the question is again like related to scholarship opportunity. Can there be any resource or website where they can check in detail about all the
Sure.
possibilities?
The easiest two available are just go to Google, Uncle, and type in Japanese embassy in India.
Okay.
Then there is a tag called culture.
Hmm.
In that culture tab, there is a scholarship tab. So click
Okay.
it there, then you'll come across most of the scholarship available. Okay.
Okay.
Otherwise, ask Google Uncle the same way that scholarships in Japan, and you'll get a lot of information on that.
Right.
The similar page or close to that is available on the consulate of Japan, Mumbai also.
Okay.
So you have to search it overnight.
Okay.
If you find out the embassy page in Delhi, definitely you'll find out a lot of information there.
Okay. Just one good question I have received, so I will ask it. Like, can we have opportunities related to startup or business setup in Japan?
Yes, definitely. And this is to be very frank with you, bread and butter. I do these education, soft skills, and other things as a part of my charity, giving back to the society. We are coming up with a fund which will be basically supporting fund to the Abe Sir's fund, where the Japanese MSMEs are willing to come and set up their business in India,
Okay.
where that fund will be utilized. Definitely, these companies are looking for the startups where they can start investing into. And if there are good projects and good companies or entrepreneurs available over here, I would love to engage with them, and then we'll definitely take it as a next step to take them to Japan.
Okay.
These are Japanese companies generally are very picky and choosy when it comes to having a relationship with Japan, non-Japanese companies, simply because, as I said, that they look for the culture, they look for the person, they don't look for the product only. Okay,
Right.
unlike with US. So you have to be basically clear about what you're looking for, what's your product, what your services are, how much money you want, and kind of inflation, kind of basically popping up the figures. The sales and marketing expenses out of the total requirement is 80%. Then nobody's going to put up money from Japan. Okay. So yeah, so the mindset has to be making the product better, making the services better, and how that can be basically provided globally, not only to Japan or not only to India, how to achieve the market and so on. Japanese don't believe only in the marketing and sales expenses as part of the investment.
Okay. So definitely we have got a lot of information about Japanese culture, the way like about discipline, work environment, different companies. I hope students have received also details about like how they can approach for the scholarship, like the different portals which sir has suggested. Also one more thing related to job opportunities, like students directly can contact training and placement officer, and through them they can do that, or they can directly search for the Japanese companies on their HR page. They will get some opportunities related to India, and application process will be definitely different, like depending on the company. So also there is one more positive thing, that definitely there are so many opportunities for civil and even like all the branches we can say, and as well as scholarship opportunities, and about the COVID effect which we discussed. So later on what we will do, sir, like in case in future if there is any opportunity for the student, maybe related to scholarship or maybe related to job, which you share with the colleges and training placement officers, you can share it with us also. We'll be sharing that information through our portal to the students like who have
Sure.
participated, so they will also get benefited. uh, Okay, just a last question. Okay, no, that question is covered now. Okay,
Okay.
so I'm really thankful, like, to sir for giving your precious time. Like, we have covered many questions and the details. Definitely, there will be some more questions which students might be having, and even the professors later on. If we will check like whether we can convey them again with the answers. So I would like to thank Federation of Training and Placement Officer as well and JSPM Group, for giving us the opportunity to organize this particular session. So again, sir, thank you.
Thank you very much. Sincere thanks to everyone. Thanks for your participation, and I'll be happy to assist anyone who is looking for any information from Japan through all of you guys. Okay.
Sure, sir. So should they connect on your website?
I mean through you guys also is okay. The
Okay.
SPN group is also okay. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Those who are individually interested in sending the queries can reach out to you first, and then
Sure.
can connect to me.
Okay, sir. So we'll be
Thank
sorted.
you.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
sir. Yeah. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.